Boys and girls, let's get ready to soar.
So this is the first house I've ever built, and took a majority of work on it myself, and especially finishing it off anyway. Grant, Larry's not around here, is he? This gate was built in the Perkins Engineering workshop without Larry knowing. They got sick of building race cars, so we built a gate. As you do. I can do the best dog impersonation. Look, who am I? You need a pretty strong gate to keep those Ford fans out. Mate, you could drive an AU Falcon into this and it wouldn't even scratch it. And here we have another quality Perkins Engineering product. This is VS roll cage tubing. I'll tell you what, if Larry ever came down here and repossessed half the furniture, I'd have nothing in here because half of it's been built at Perkins Engineering. But very strong. If there's ever an earthquake, we just dive under here and we'll never get hit, mate. This is what they call the Senna edition. A limited edition range that Ducati made. We're huge Senna fans. My wife Julia actually met him and got some photos signed by him. What a beautiful thing, huh?
Just have a look at that line. You call that a beautiful thing?
It's straight. Hang on, look at it from that side, it's all right.
We're about to hear the engines roar for race 1 of the GMC 400 for 2001, and this will be something special as we see a few dark clouds above that shot that you're watching right now. There's been some rain circulating the course. It's not impossible that we might see a shower here before the end of the day, but nevertheless the temperatures, having dropped considerably since we began the program, are still holding. Let's have a look at the grid.
And on pole position after that tremendous lap, Stephen Johnson of 43.8, Marcus Ambrose, Glenn Seaton, Stephen Ellery. Fords in the top 4 positions, then Mark Scaife, Todd Kelly, Craig Lowndes and Stephen Richards.
Garth Tander and Greg Murphy round out the top 10. Cameron McConville, good effort that. Russell Ingall alongside car 12, in position 12 I should say. Paul Morris and Cameron McLean, the Queenslander. Paul Radisich, as a result of that spin in the top 10 shootout, he goes back to 15.
As the field takes the green flag to move away on the warm-up lap. Outside the top 15, championship leader Jason Bright. John Bowe had a tough day in qualifying yesterday. Ditto David Bernard, Jason Bargwana. Then Anthony Tratt, Paul Wheel, Brad Jones and John Faulkner, who's showing on the grid, but I don't believe he'll take his spot.
No, the car has not been completed, or the rebuild has not been completed before the start, so he won't be joining us. Rodney Forbes and Tony Longhurst out of 25 and 26. Jason Richards all the way from New Zealand. Dougal McDougall out of 28. Tyler Mack from Paul Romano. And Mark Larkin also suffered a big crash yesterday, but he will take the start, I believe.
I just should add, Mark, that John Faulkner crashed this morning in the warm-up and the damage was so extensive that he was not able to make the grid for this first race. He has support from a new backer this weekend in Thermo King, so it's disappointing for him. Hopefully we'll see him before the weekend is out.
So let's have a look at the cameras as we work our way through how much of the race coverage we'll have for you in the GMC 400. Here's the reigning Shell Series champion, Mark Scaife, carrying the Victoria Bitter in-car camera. Got 3 angles covered, or 4 angles covered in the Holden Racing Team Commodore.
This is Paul Radisich, who's been the quickest man in practice, quickest in qualifying, but when it counted in the shootout, well, you saw the mistake.
Greg Murphy carrying 4 cameras on behalf of Kmart. Got every angle covered here. Kmart cars quick in qualifying. Murphy looking for a good result here today.
3 onboard cameras with Craig Lowndes and the Gibson Motorsport Ford. Close up of the driver, you can see there's a rearward shot and a 360-degree pan. We'll have all the angles covered with Craig. He's in 7th.
Russell Ingall, the enforcer. Not quite up where he'd like to be in qualifying, carrying the Stratfield in-car cameras.
Possibly the world's worst carpenter.
Great. May have noticed he took his finger off doing that. So.
And hasn't it recovered quickly?
Here's our man who'll start off pole position, though. An outstanding effort in the top 15 shootout. Stephen Johnson, look at this guy. Just 24 years of age. Marcus Ambrose claimed his first Shell Championship Series victory at Hidden Valley a month ago. Now he's back in Canberra, and that form is continuing. Brilliant in qualifying. He'll start off the outside of the front row.
Yeah, it's amazing when you think Ambrose has not been here before, and it's a really good showing. Incredible.
Barry, he's never qualified worse than 6th in the 5 championship rounds he's done so far, so quite phenomenal.
Ford race analysis on the streets of Canberra. This race, first of 3 this weekend, 100 kilometres, 25 laps. 31 people will take the starting grid. The window for the compulsory pit stop for tyres is between laps 3 and 18. And last year's winner was Stephen Richards when he was driving the Kmart Holden. This year on board the Ford Tickford Racing Falcon, and he recovered well in the shootout after a tough day in qualifying yesterday where he only just squeaked inside the top 15.
The funny thing about it is the pit window opens on the they can come in at the end of the second lap. Yeah. Some of the guys, their tyres will just about be getting warm. They come in and change him over.
Craig Lowndes, if he does decide to take that option, remember he had that big fry up on his left front tyre in the top 10 shootout. He'll probably be glad to get rid of that one.
And the word from the pit lane is that there's just minimal damage on the inside of that tyre. It does have a couple of flat spots on it, but not sufficient to cause huge grief at this point.
So here we are getting ready for the start. Stephen Johnson, his first pole position in the Shell Championship Series.
Thing to watch for on this track is the incredible funnel effect and the tightness on that little approach to the first corner. It's so incredibly tight down there. There is always a concertina effect when the cars all rush down to the first corner, and here it's particularly exaggerated.
You see where the curve juts out there, that sort of narrows the thing down, that starts to funnel, doesn't it?
25 laps the distance, just over 100 kilometres.
And typical of street circuits, when you do make a mistake, Barry, there are very few options after that. On board with Russell.
You just hope that you wouldn't get anybody still, wouldn't you? Because there's not exactly a lot of room to get through, is there?
Nervous moment this. Marcus Ambrose starting off the front row. And it's going to be a real bottleneck as they head down toward turn 1.
Set for a start on the rev limiters.
Long time.
Away they go, and it's a great jump from Stephen Johnson. Glenn Seaton gets away well. Slots in behind Ambrose, and then this thunderous pack, 31 in total through turn 1. They'll be extra careful. They're down to a crawling pace through the first corner.
Just incredibly tight through there. You can see them bumper to bumper. People just sitting on their brakes back to first gear, just waiting for the traffic to sort themselves out as they punch up through the GMC flip-flop for the first time.
Oh, poor old Brighty stuck right at the back there. That's going to do no good at all.
Yeah, Todd Kelly made a pretty bad start too. He bogged right down. He got swamped by a number of competitors.
It's a real problem when you qualify lowly on this grid, on this track, because as the leaders were going through turns 3 and 4, the tail enders are only exiting turn 1. Look how they've spread out on this opening lap. 1 of 25.
The state circle the first time around. Stephen Johnson with Marcus Ambrose in his mirrors. Looks like a nice clean start so far. First of the FTR Fords. Glenn Seaton in there too. Stephen Ellery. Play hard under brakes. Shuffle up toward turn 11 into Flynn Drive.
Ambrose is going with Johnson. Oh, here's a move.
Oh, that's...
And one of the Kmart cars touches its sister car.
I mean, Todd Kelly trying to fight his way back from that bad start. It's Fords 1, 2, 3 at the front. So they punch out of this chicane, head down this Flynn Place, building up to 180, 190 Ks on the approach to turn 13. Stephen Johnson's got the big V8 pack bearing down on him on this first hectic lap. Magnificent sight as they break at the end of Flynn Place, flick through this hard right-left chicane back toward the Ford sweeper. There's another angle of it. It's an example of the big crowd here, the nation's capital. Watch this opening race in the GMC 400.
Hopefully don't speak too soon, but it looks like it's been a pretty clean start given the difficulties of racing on cold tyres on a street circuit. We've got off to a good start in this first of 3 events today.
It's amazing how it's spaced out as quick as it has if you look at it there. Look at it. It's surprising.
Stephen Johnson, Marcus Ambrose in second, Glenn Seaton in third, Mark Scape, the first of the Commodores, in fourth, Stephen Ellery, Craig Lowndes, Stephen Richards, Greg Murphy, Todd Kelly and Garth Tander rounding out the top 10.
And Scape showing signs of beginning to look around the outside of Seaton. He's just had a bit of a nibble in a couple of places.
Look at how close these cars shave the concrete walls and those tyres that have been placed on the inside of the corner to stop curb chopping. They're just cutting it so fine. Look at this great side of these V8s thunder up. Kings Avenue once again, hard under brakes into turn 10. Now keep in mind when Stephen Johnson comes around with this pack behind him at the end of this lap, the pit window will be open.
Remember, last year there were a lot of people that made gain out of clever strategy here. If you're buried in the traffic and you can find some open space, you may make some ground. Look at that gap closing up under brakes between race leader Stephen Johnson and Marcus Ambrose. That's normal. It looks like there's a debris flag being shown to the field there. You can see the yellow flag with the red stripe, perhaps fluid on the road or some broken componentry. Just warning competitors that there's something to look out for as they make their run down now to the turn 13 chicane. Lake Burley Griffin on the left-hand side, on board with Marcus Ambrose.
Got to play it cool here. All these drivers under enormous pressure this weekend, being a double points race. This can really make or break your championship campaign. So you've got to be hard and aggressive, but you also got to have a level of conservatism in your approach to make sure you get to the end and you get a bag of points.
We've just had word from the Bridgestone boys that there is possible rain just past Parliament House. And that means that some teams may delay their strategy to see what the weather is doing if they're onto it at this stage.
This place in the rain would be like a skating rink.
And we had a wet practice session yesterday morning to open proceedings, and it was very, very slippery. The track will be a little cleaner now than it was at this point yesterday, but it would still be very tippy-toe-ish. And you can see from that onboard shot just how dark it looked outside. So no change at the top of the order at the moment. Scaife still applying pressure to the back of Seaton, who's now starting to, if anything, just close the gap a little bit to Ambrose, who's breathing all over the back of Stephen Johnson. Their tyres are now warm, their brakes are now warm, they're getting settled. We'll see whose cars are balanced and whose are not.
When you think about it, it'd be a lot to be said for Stephen Johnson to be kept out there for a little while, wouldn't there? He's got nice clear air in front of him. He's not getting held up at all.
If you're in probably these first few positions, there's not a lot to be gained by rushing in too early.
Is that smoke coming?
Well, down the bottom of State Circle there, it's very easy to lock a brake, so you may have seen just a little pinch at the front right or left tyre down there. It's actually easy to damage both of them in that area because initially you're turning slightly to the left, and so the left front's vulnerable, and then of course you rock the car to the other side, and then the front right's a little vulnerable. Look at Scaife right behind Seaton, then it's Ellery. Great onboard shot with Mark Scaife. Gives you an idea of how busy he'll be at the wheel, the footwork, what's going on with the gear lever. It's turn 13, back down to first gear. We don't see first gear being used this often at any other racetrack in Australia. First, then it's second, then briefly third, and then fourth as they go between turns 14 and 15. The last two corners on the track, and then the back. And in comes the leaders, and they're both going in. In fact, all three.
As soon as everyone's coming in. Looks like Russell Ingall's gone on, though.
Remember, this is the first time in race conditions that we have seen people using their electronic speed limiters. It's 40 kilometres an hour. Ambrose peels off. Long, long way up here for Stephen Johnson.
Interesting tactic being applied by the Ford Sigford Racing team. They brought Stephen Richards in ahead of Glenn Seaton. Stephen Johnson is in. This is a pretty quick stop. Dean Orr, I had a word to he and some of the boys down here a short while ago. They said, yep, we're definitely going to bring him in as soon as we can. Stephen Johnson's out of here.
This could pay dividends for Glenn Seaton because he's now got a clean track. And if he can do a Schumacher here and punch out some very, very good speed for a lap or two and then get a clear pit lane, he can be in shape. Scaife comes out, he's in front of Ambrose. But remember that Seaton is leading this race and he'll have no threat from anybody behind, and he's got an empty track. See, there's a blend line there that stewards have been watching carefully this weekend to make sure that drivers exiting the pit lane do not infringe with those that are on the pace coming through turn 2. On board with Ambrose. He's behind Scaife.
HRT did Mark a nice favour there, didn't they?
Seaton holding his breath, hoping there's no safety car here. And Ambrose now gets himself back up to speed. And as they said, most of those top cars were going to come in as soon as that pit window opened.
Remember, on cold tyres as well.
As for that Mark Scaife pit stop, it was actually a good pit stop. The only thing was he got balked on the way out. It wasn't quite quick enough, and of course he just lost that little bit, and that's all it takes to lose those positions here in pit lane.
Well, not quite quick enough, but better than some, because he's come out in front of Ambrose, who's now looking to make some ground on the inside.
So now the battle. Compulsory pit stop out of the way. Here comes Glenn Seaton. Was our race leader. He's peeled off into pit lane now.
And that means that Lowndes is leading. Lowndes has stayed out. And so the strategy there from Gibson Motorsport is the one that Glenn is adopting, which is to try and get clear air.
Looks like a pretty slick stop so far from the Ford Sigford Racing team for Glenn Seaton. Jason Bright in as well, so too Paul Radisich and David Bernard. Just reminding Glenn of the pit lane speed limit. Ivan in the background there on the radio. And there's Bright coming in. Remember that Jason was buried in this field after qualifying yesterday. Now, Lowndes is the leader. If they have a pace car situation now, he will get buried. But if it works to his advantage, he's got the clear track that Glenn had briefly. I'd say Glenn will come out as a net winner in this. He is. And he comes out in second place. Now, that's the advantage of having the clear track and a clearer pit lane. He comes on in front of Scaife, who's got warm tyres. He's got cold tyres. This is real pressure for these three drivers. Seaton, then Scaife, then Ambrose. And Scaife and Ambrose will be impatient because Glenn will be trying to get this thing up to pace. A very pressured time.
Dick Johnson's team did a brilliant job for Junior there. They turned him around very quickly, got him back out in front of the field. But look at this sandwich now with Scaife trying to get past Seaton. He knows he's got cold tyres. This is the only chance he's going to have to pounce, but Seaton is equal to the task.
And Glenn cannot afford to let Mark go by, because if he does, there'll be an onslaught of people who will go by in a train, and it'll be like being punch drunk out the other side of it. You'll lose 4 or 5 spots.
Craig Lowndes still the race leader. He's adopting the strategy we saw Seaton adopt the lap before. He's got clear track. He's trying to make up a lot of position. It's going to be interesting when Lowndes comes into pit this time. We saw the Gibson Motorsport team getting ready for his stop. So this is going to be a critical one for Lowndes.
I think Glenn's safe now. Half a lap in and his tyres are up to temp. He's glancing in the mirror there. Remember that Scaife's got to be defensive as well, as we've got Lowndes in now. He's led for a lap. His last lap was a 45.4, made him comprehensively the quickest bloke on the track. He's given the tyres a scrape as well on the front left-hand corner of the splitter. Not unusual around this circuit. Look at this battle. Now, can Lowndes get in and out? That's the big question. These guys are at the turn 13 complex. It's Seaton, Scaife, Ambrose, Ellery. Where is Lowndes?
Here he comes. This is going to be very, very close. They're coming back onto the pit straight. Can Lowndes get out in front?
40k seems like an eternity. Here they come. Here comes the train.
Here comes race
Lowndes
leader
against the limiter. What will be the outcome?
Second place, Stephen Johnson.
No, it's going to be close. It's going to be unbelievably close. Where are they? And Johnson gets by.
Well, Stephen Johnson just taking advantage of that momentum that he had, and he had warm tyres as well. So Lowndes tried to fight on the outside, just didn't quite have the speed, but he pushes back into seconds. That's a great strategy by the Gibson Motorsport team.
Yeah, smart call. They left him out for 3 laps, so he had a clear pit lane, he had clear track. He did a 45.4 on that previous lap. Everybody else was in the 46s. That was the strategy, and that's the way that it's going to stay for a long time now. Look at the margin back to Glenn Seaton. That's what traffic can do.
Well, Crompton, I remember seeing you.
Look at
That's a fair old whack on that.
I remember seeing you pull a similar strategy last year when you were driving for FTR. It worked a treat.
Absolutely, and we just made the call out of the cockpit there by just waiting for some clear air. And if you've watched Formula One races, you don't need to be a road scholar to figure out what to do.
What a great strategy by the Gibson Motorsport team. Getting back out there. He took advantage of those 2 clear laps where he had clear track in front of him, 2 very, very quick laps, and that allowed him to leapfrog the field. Let's have a look at this replay before the stop.
Oh, one on the way in and one on the way out.
Well, at least it was even.
Matching pair.
It's a lot of damage, though.
Just had a word to Freddie Gibson and the boys down here at Gibson Motorsport. Lots of pats on the back and cheers. The boys very pleased with that slick stop. They managed to get out ahead of Greg Murphy. And the thing was, too, that the damage to the front right of Craig's car was just an early altercation with someone on that opening lap. No damage to report. The car is fine.
Well, I'm not 100% in agreement with you there, Greg. There's damage, but it doesn't look like it's desperado damage at the moment. But hopefully it hasn't dislodged any of the mounting for the front air dam, because if it does and the thing drops on the road, he's in trouble. So here's the Shell Helix race score, showing Paul Morris in the lead at the moment with Wheel, Jones, Forbes, Larkham, Mecklem, Johnson and Lowndes. But remember, those guys have yet to stop. Seaton, Scaife, Ambrose, Ellery, Kelly, Tander, Murphy and Radisich.
Yeah, we should say there that Stephen Johnson is our nominal race leader at the moment. Stephen Richards, Russell Ingall, Cameron McConville, Jason Barguada, John Bow, Cameron McLean, Jason Bright, some 49 seconds behind the race leader. Larry Perkins just behind him.
Then Bernard, Tratt, Richards, McDougall, Romano, Reid and Longhurst. Stay with us. A lot more to come from Canberra.
We're back. The GMC 400 race 1, 25 laps, and in that small, compressed time, we've seen some remarkable tactics unfold so far. Paul Morris is on-track leader, but in fact, Stephen Johnson it's Paul Wheel now taking the lead on track, but Stephen Johnson is unofficially, after his pit stop, the race leader. But a great battle underway. The V8 website, of course, is going to be up and running again with all the details of this round and the next for the entire series. That is it, v8supercar.com.au, and your opportunity today to chat with Marcus Ambrose. That's the time, 6 to 7 p.m. on rpmlive.tv. Don't miss your chance there. Marcus, of course, having a wonderful season and a great weekend too so far.
Debris flag being shown to the field as they exited the final corner as well. We're on 8 of 25. Remember, this is the first of 3 races this weekend. The second race, the first tomorrow, is going to be a full reverse grid encounter, and then the third race is worth double points, and it's longer. 400 kilometres the total journey. And I said earlier in the broadcast that if you want to see a great raw display of performance and car handling, this is one of the best circuits in the country for it, because you see 1,350 kilogram cars at 11 tenths being threaded beneath bridges and between concrete, and it's quite a skillful act.
You see some of the guys, it's almost like watching the Formula One's qualifying at Monaco, isn't it? It's when you get the thing out, it's hanging the back end down.
Glenn Seaton locked the front right brake very badly, and now it's given Mark the opportunity to have a run on him, but Glenn's woken up to it and gone to the inside as they go down State Circle. That could have done front right tyre damage. Scafe's poorly positioned now as they go through the right-hander, but Glenn only just barely saved his bacon. Mark will do a crisscross, but again, that puts him on the wrong side of the road when they get down to this next chicane complex.
Do we have a problem with these pit lane speed limiters? Now, I was just listening to Greg Murphy's radio when he came in. They had quite a slow pit stop. The reason was because the engine was cutting out when he got to the point of pushing the pit lane speed limiter button, and he complained the engine kept stalling. This is a situation David Bernard had yesterday. His engine was misfiring while he was running around, and in the mad rush to try and fix it, he was pressing all sorts of buttons, and the button that he pushed to fix the miss in his engine was that pit lane speed limiter. So it's an interesting thing with this new innovation.
A few teething troubles there. Most of the systems seem to be working pretty well. Get back to this battle. The order at the moment, Mark Larkham is leading the race, but of course he's got a pit stop. This is the real battle for the race. Stephen Johnson, Craig Lowndes watching here. It's Glenn Seaton, Mark Scaife, Marcus Ambrose and Stephen Ellery. And Garth Tander's pretty handily placed too. He's eighth.
Quickest guy on the track at the moment is Lowndes, 44.7.
That's a lap record.
And keep in mind, Craig held the previous lap record, a 1:45.35 set last year in the Holton Racing Team Commodore. So and look at how much room he has made up on Stephen Johnson. He's climbed right up onto the back of the Shell Ford when his tyres came up to temperature. So we've got a real battle for the lead here. Stephen Johnson and Craig Lowndes. Mark Larkham is still leading the race, of course, but Larkham is soon to peel off for his compulsory stop.
We'll just go for a ride with Craig as he does a lap of this amazing circuit, and we'll just be quiet so you can listen to the roar of the Ford V8. Well, that's a lap of this Canberra street circuit. 15 corners in all, 3.9 kilometres. We might mention that because of the number of overhead bridges, that's why we're getting the picture breakup. We actually saw an unusual mistake made by Lowndes before as he came onto the front straight. You saw him miss a gear and the thing coughed and spluttered, went onto the rev limiter and he gathered it back up and got back in touch with Stephen Johnson. There's a yellow flag flying down the bottom of Flynn Drive there as well. So this battle continues between first and second, but note just how busy and how physical this track is.
Yeah, I couldn't quite make out what Craig had done there to start with. It sounded like the motor had cut out.
Mark Larkham is the only man now still to make his stop, and he's, of course, leading this race. Well, these are your nominal race leaders, really. Here he is, and he's peeling off now to make his compulsory stop. So here comes Johnson and Lowndes to take over the lead officially.
Big damage on this car yesterday, and the TAFE folks worked hard on it all day, and it's quite a recovery from Mark. The thing's actually been punching out reasonable pace there, but it's been an awkward start to the weekend for him with that damage.
You see the job those TAFE kids did was absolutely amazing, wasn't it?
Yeah, they're brilliant. They really do a tremendous job. One of the things that's interesting is that Marcus Ambrose, well, I was about to say, is disappearing down the order. We've just found out why.
Oh, look.
He's parked up against the side of the fence there in the final corner. Is that as a result of damage or some reliability issue?
So no, we're just watching his position just trickle down the order. Might be able to hear a radio message if we're lucky.
Remember, he was in the midst of that battle that involved Glenn Seaton, Mark Scaife himself. I think Tander was behind. So perhaps something has happened in that little group there. Try and source the answers for you. See the ventilation that he's got to the helmet?
He's not getting out, it's not safe, he's telling the marshal.
I don't blame him.
But he is stranded there. What a huge disappointment for Ambrose. This race.
If they can get him, if they can just get him back to the pits and get him running again, reverse grid, he could be in the pound six for the next race, couldn't he?
Just had a word to Jim Stone down here at Stone Brothers Racing. Some understandably disappointed faces after Marcus's great qualifying effort. The gearbox has unfortunately broken. It looks like it's the end of race 1 of 3 here at Canberra for Marcus Ambrose.
Well, that's unusual. Funny place for it to have ended up. One of the issues with this track, and it's a typical street circuit issue, it's not just a Canberra thing, but street circuits are punishingly hard on anything to do with driveline, gearbox, clutch, axles.
A lot of low speed, high torque application.
And I've made the comment before about the amount of times they're using first gear, which is very unusual. And that's right, so you're delivering all that horsepower in short, sharp stabs. And any time where the wheels are jumping on and off the ground over these curves like you see here, you know, just imagine life for a moment as an axle.
There's Jim Stone.
Safety car is on the circuit. They've got safety car boards out here to try and rescue Marcus Ambrose's car. This is going to bunch the field up, but this is what we were saying coming into this round. This race is just so important to your championship hopes, and this is wretched luck for Marcus Ambrose. Broken transmission. Broken transmission after such a brilliant start to the weekend.
As you say, it's probably broken a tooth.
Now, someone watching at home may be thinking, well, this is great. If this puts him to the back of the field here, it's going to give him a good starting position in the reverse grid race tomorrow. That's true, but don't forget, it's all based on points earned from races 1 and 2, which gives you a starting position for race 3. So it's good for him and it's bad for him at the same time. Stephen Johnson, though, is our race leader. Craig Lowndes in second. Glenn Seaton in third. Mark Scaife fourth. Tander, Ellery, Todd Kelly and Greg Murphy rounding out the top 8.
Then Radisich, who's storming back through the field, and Richards, Morris, Ingle, McConville, Bargwanna, John Bow and McLean. We're back with more of the GMC 400.
Damage that's been sustained, very hot in there too, by the way, right across this rim. A wheel nut came off. Can you believe it? What a heartbreaking way for Cameron McConville's weekend to end in race 1.
Just lost your fingerprints there, Greg, which is handy if you're going to rob a bank sometime.
So the car's behind safety car.
Ideas.
Yeah, it's when 10 pay him as much as they did and need to rob banks.
Safety car conditions the order. Stephen Johnson, Craig Lowndes, Glenn Seaton is in third. So it's forwards 1, 2, 3 at the top. Mark Scaife in fourth. Garth Tander has done a great job to fight his way up to fifth now. Very handily placed behind Scaife. Stephen Ellery in sixth. Todd Kelly in seventh. Greg Murphy, his teammate, in eighth. Radisich, he's done a good job to get up into the top 10 as well. He's ninth. Stephen Richards is 10th. So good effort from those guys toward the back of the top 10.
I'd be surprised if there's not more gearbox trouble. What is it? How many times they use first round here?
5 times
Yeah.
by my calculation. Some guys do it a little differently to others, but there's at least 4 and sometimes 5 occasions where you grab low gear around here, which is difficult for transmission in both directions. You know, well, first of all, when you're trying to pull the car up, and then when you nail it coming off the corner.
Great shot there from the chopper, showing the Chinese embassy on the inside of the circuit as they weave down Flynn Drive through the chicane into Flynn Place. It's a magnificent spectacle. The Hyatt Hotel within the grounds of the track as well.
Is that your presidential suite there, Mark?
Yeah,
that's to the right.
No, that's not my one. Mine's bigger than that.
Oh, no, actually, heaven forbid that'd be Tony Cochrane's room, wouldn't it?
yeah.
I beg forgiveness. I beg forgiveness.
So great shots here from the chopper as the field sit behind the safety car waiting for the restart as they head up toward the sweeper. Lake Burley Griffin just to the outside of the circuit. You can see the main traffic can continue to flow through the centre of the city. So what happens here? No more compulsory pit stops to come. This is a charge to the flag. And I guess Craig Lowndes will be looking for the slightest hiccup from Stephen Johnson to see if he can find his way through once they go back to full green.
It seems to have taken a long time to clear.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was just thinking the same thing, because there's Marcus's car on the back of that truck in the pits.
Maybe it was jammed in gear and difficult to get onto the back of the tilt tray or something like that. I don't really know, but
that's the tragedy for these guys, isn't it, Neil? If there was just some way they could get that car fixed and get him back on to be declared a finisher, it wouldn't be so bad. But now he has to start from the back of the grid regardless, and he's got no points from race 1. The worst way you could possibly start your weekend at Canberra.
While they take Marcus's car back to the pits, we'll take another break because when we return, we'll have race action for you here in the GMC 400.